Greetings everyone and welcome back to another video. Today I have a tier list for you. We're going to be ranking all of the Lobi's tier 6 ships. That does not include any of the tier 5 ships or any of the promo ships that occasionally get rotated in there. Just the tier 6 ones. And let's talk a little bit about the different tiers before we actually go into the ships. S tier is basically top priority for what you should consider buying. So if you're in the market for a Lobi ship, either because you have the Lobi, you have an event reward, you have some EC and you want to buy a ship off the exchange, whatever it is, you should at least consider all of the S tier ships first, because they probably either have some really essential trait or console, or they're just really premium high tier ships that are worth flying. A tier are ships that don't have any real faults. You know, they're basically really solid ships. Maybe they have some good accessories, but there's nothing really wrong with them. They may not be optimal, they may not be top tier, they may not be competitive for the top spots on the leaderboard, but they're just really good ships. So you're going to be happy flying them and not really regret them, and they're probably going to age pretty well. B tier ships are ships that just have some glaring fault. It's a minor thing overall. They're still decent ships, but there's just something about them, either when you go to build the ship or fly the ship, that's going to nag at you a little bit. Just something that's a little bit off about them. Then C tier ships are ships that are either half bad, half good, or just have multiple significant problems. And then D tier ships are just garbage. So let's go ahead, and that I wouldn't recommend. I would never recommend a D tier ship unless you just really love the theme or the aesthetic or something like that. So let's go ahead and take a look at some ships. And for our first ship, we have the Tal Shiar Adapted Battlecruiser, which turns out to be a pretty good kinetic platform. You've got a lot of universal seating. Well, not really a lot, but the commander seat is universal. It's got the command seating on there for Concentrate Firepower 3, and it's just a really solid ship. So we're going to put that in A tier. Because it has a commander universal, you have options, in the future. So if things change, you could change the ship. All right, for the next ship, we have the Baltum Heavy Raider, and this is a pretty good ship. It's one of the only raiders in the game that has a 5-1-1 weapon layout. There is another one on this tier list, but there are very few of them. Most raiders do not have 5 weapons in the front, so that already separates it from the pack. And because it's a raider, it has the raider flanking. It has a lot of universal seats, which makes it very flexible, which also means it's going to age well, because whatever is popular at the time, you can do it. It has an intel seat, which has a lot of uses, but mostly it's good for override subsystem safeties. It can be good for unconventional systems, procs, whatever you want to do with it. So it doesn't have, the specializations that people want for the highest tier builds, but it's a very solid ship, so I'm going to put it in A tier because there's nothing really wrong with it. It has a console, which is pretty good if you want to do a cannon build. Then we have the Alachi Ornash Battlecruiser, and it has command seating. It can do a kinetic build, but it has a plain commander engineering seat, which really brings it down. The trait and console are fun because they give you some pets, but they're not really anything optimal. So if you like Alachi stuff, then you might want to grab it. It's a ship that I have, and I do enjoy it. But because of that commander engineering seat, I can't give it anything better than a B. But the torpedo stuff does buoy it a little bit. Then we have the Hazari Destroyer, and I'm going to destroy it by putting it in the garbage bin because it is a terrible ship with very few redeeming qualities, and there's a long list of C-Store ships that are better than this. It has a Destroyer Mastery package and stuff, but it's got a 4-3 weapon layout. It doesn't have any, of the really good specialization seats. It's just next. Then we have the Herc Multi-Mission Science Vessel, which is not a particularly great science vessel, but it is actually a pretty good torpedo ship. It has a 4-2 weapon layout. It has the command seating that you would want. It has a hangar bay, and you can also get a secondary deflector, which is pretty unique for not a lot of torpedo ships have a secondary deflector. And because it's a science ship, it's going to have a lot of science seating, which makes it good for unconventional systems procs. So it's a solid kinetic platform, so it gets an A. And the trait's pretty fun too because it gives you some free pets. And then we have the Hushnok warship, and I've gone back and forth with this about where to put it. It's a pretty solid ship just in terms of like base stats and all that. And the trait is desirable in terms of beam overload and cannon rapid fire because it can give you bonus damage for that. And so I feel like I'm still going to put it in B tier. I know I said B tier has something that's wrong with them, and it doesn't have anything as obvious as the commander engineering seat. But every time I put it in A tier, I always look at it later and feel like it doesn't belong there. So I'm going to put it in B tier. Okay, now we come down to the Jem'Hadar Strike Wing Escort, and this is not a good ship, so it's going in D tier. Console layout, weapon layout, or the weapon layout especially. The console layout's fine. The weapon layout, the seating, there's nothing special here. There's a lot of C-store ships that are better than this. It's just not very good. Then we have the Klein, and the Klein, in my opinion, does not have a trait or console as good as the Hushnok does, but in terms of the ship itself, it is a better Hushnok, like a between the two. I would rather fly this than the Hushnok. So I'm going to also put it in B tier, although I think an argument could definitely be made for A tier, and in a previous version of this I had them both in A tier, but I've decided to move them down. And the thing I don't like about the Klein, which is probably the same thing for the Hushnok, is they both have temporal seating, so you can do recursive shearing, but it just feels like that's their one trick, and especially with the Klein, you look at it and it's a warship that wants to be a science vessel. So your inclination is to build it that way, but you're not going to have a secondary deflector. And then if you build it for other kinds of damage, then it doesn't have what you need to support it. And so I just feel like with these two ships, there isn't really anything glaringly wrong with them, other than I feel like their design is sort of split. They're very science-y in a way that's not useful for a warship, because I don't think warships benefit from having all the temporal and the science stuff. Maybe that's not a good reason to put it in B tier, but it's my list, so there we go. And now we come to the first S tier ship, the Maquis Raider, and I'm going to instantly put that up into S tier. The ship itself is actually really good. It's just like the Baltim Raider. It's a 5-1-1. It has all the universal seating. It has the Raider flanking. And because it's a full Miracle Worker ship, it gets extra console slot. This is my ship of choice for cannon rapid fire builds or dual beam bank builds, although I don't really like to do those. So the ship itself is definitely solid, but the reason why it gets S tier, because otherwise that would just be good enough for A tier, but the reason why it gets S tier is the console, the Plasma Storm Generator, which is really kind of an essential console for EPG builds, so it definitely deserves a spot at the top. And next we have the Not Cool or Not Cool Science Vessel, and I decided not to put science vessels in the D tier because even a bad science vessel is still a science vessel, but it's just, there's not really a lot of redeeming qualities here. The best you can say is it's a science vessel. And then we come to the NX refit, and even though I was pretty down on the legendary version, I think the legendary version has aged better in terms of a ship you would want to fly because things change in the game. Maybe it wasn't true back when it came out, but it is true now. So the ship itself is nothing special, but it has a really banger accessory package. The console, the bombardment warhead console, is good for kinetic builds. It's good for energy weapon builds. If you pair it with a DPRM, it has crit chance. And then the trait can give you a lot of Cat 1 damage for beam overload and cannon rapid fire. So it just has a really, really solid accessory package, and that's why I'm going to put it in A tier. Okay, now let's look at the Paradox, and it's definitely better than the Nakul ship, but I don't think it's good enough for B tier. What's wrong with it? Well, if the lieutenant and command seats were flipped around, it would get a higher score. But as it is, you can only go up to Concentrate Firepower 2, which normally you never want to do because it overwrites Concentrate firepower 3 that other people have up. So in order for command to really be worth it, it needs to be at least lieutenant commander. And this just doesn't have it. And then it has some other fixed seating that you don't want on it. And even though it has the hangar bay and all that, it's not a bad ship, right? And I'm personally a big fan of it. It's on my favorite ships video, but I can't in good faith give it better than a C. I think that would be unfair. So it's like a high C, maybe it's on the border of C and B, but it's still C tier. And then we have a, oh gosh, I don't know where to put this. The Sona Intel Battle Cruiser, boom. S tier all the way. The ship itself would probably be a B or C tier ship. It's okay. A lot of the same problems that the Paradox has, actually, where there's nothing really especially wrong with it. It's not like horrendously offensive or anything, but it's just not quite there. But the traits, subspatial warheads, in my opinion, might be the most desirable trait in the game, or the most powerful trait in the game. It's definitely up there, top 5 best traits in the game. If you care about DPS stuff, care about kinetic stuff, that's got to be your first stop. It's just way too important, way too powerful, and it definitely deserves S tier. If any ship deserves S tier, this ship deserves S tier. Why are there always sirens outside? Anyway, so science vessels have not been doing well so far, but now we come to the Eyeball, also known as the Sphere Builder multi-mission science vessel, and it is going to get a solid little spot in A tier because it has the temporal seating that you want. It's got a good bridge officer layout. It's got a hangar bay. It's got a 4-2 weapon layout if you want to do something with that. It's just a darn solid ship. And then we come down to the Ikotomi science vessel, a Tholian ship, and we get yet another S tier because improved photonic officer is, this might be, it would definitely be C tier, and probably the low end of C tier. It'd be down by the Nakul ship if it was just the ship itself, because it's not that great. But the trait, boy, that is a really essential science trait, and I think it deserves a spot in S tier for that. And then we come to the Zenkethi Rajbay battle cruiser. Definitely, if the Zentaur is Alec Baldwin, then this is Steve Baldwin. Okay, this is I don't know. This is not a good ship. It is going in D tier. It does have Miracle Worker seating, which is not even like a high-ranking Miracle Worker seat. It has a Commander Engineering seat. Basically, if you have a Commander Engineering seat, you're in trouble. And it does not have command seating or anything to make up for it, so it's going D tier. Then we have the Undine Biocruiser, and this is a really good kinetic platform. I was looking at it again, and I was really impressed with it. It does have pilot seating, which some people aren't going to like. You are going to be down to bridge officer traits, but so maybe it's not going to be up there with the Styx and the Dale Kalina and all that stuff, but it's probably like one tier below that. It's a very, very solid kinetic platform, and definitely probably flying under the radar, just because who wants a ship that's like 7th best or something? I don't know where it would be, but it's a pretty good ship, to be honest, if you want to do torpedo stuff. Then we have the Vodwar Astica, and back during the Neolithic period, this was pretty popular for its trait, but that time has passed, and it is just another one of these cruisers that doesn't really have anything to offer. Now we come to the Vengeance, and it doesn't have that extra secret sauce that people are looking for. It doesn't have the Commander Command and all that stuff, but it's just a really solid ship. My re-review of this came out a couple of days ago from the time this is going to get released, hypothetically. So if you've seen that, my opinion of it is pretty good going into 2022. It's not going to light the world on fire. It's never going to be anyone's top parsing ship, but it has a lot of strengths, and it's just really solid, and there's really nothing to complain about, so it's going in A tier. Okay, now we have the Voth Bastille Science Vessel, and yeah, this is just another C tier clunker. It's a science vessel, and that's probably the biggest thing it has going for it. Next we have the Walker, and oh my god, I cannot stand this ship. It's another engineering clunker with no redeeming qualities, which you would hope for better out of a ship like this, especially since it's, the Walker. it's not some random alien ship. It's like a really important Federation ship, but it's not good. I'm sorry. Pilot seating and whatever. It's just, if you're flying it, you're flying it because it's like a Miranda, not because it's a good ship. And now this pains me. It pains me in my soul, but I have to put this ugly son of a bitch up in S tier because top 3 ugliest ships in the game, this is in that list, hands down. Cannot stand the way this ship looks. Turns out it's a pretty good kinetic platform, but that has nothing to do with why it's an S tier. It's an S tier because of the trait, super weapon ingenuity. If you're doing beam overload stuff, you should be trying to get this if you can. It extends beam overload from 66% uptime to 100% uptime because it extends it from 10 seconds to 15. That is massively important. It's sort of like, you don't want to do kinetics without subspatial warheads. You don't want to do science without the plasma storm. You don't want to do beam overload without this trait. So that's why it goes in S tier, because it's one of those short list must-have type things that you want to get your hands on. But it's ugly. I don't know if I mentioned that already, but it is ugly. Okay, now the Sistros, or however you pronounce it, the Xindi Escort is it's okay. It's really, really aggressively okay, and that's it. There's nothing really special feeling about it. You can run recursive shearing 1 on it, stuff like that, but it's not, I think, it's not a cruiser with a commander engineering. It is still an escort, so like I'm going to put it in C tier just because it has those baseline tactical things that kind of save it from being a real dumpster ship. But it's not a good ship, so it's like low C tier. And then we have the Zale Heavy Cruiser, which is kind of like the Ornash. It's like a worse version of the Ornash. I think I would rather fly the Ornash. But it's not an awful ship. You can make a torpedo platform out of it if you want to, but it's going to be awkward and it's not going to be as good as on other ships. So it's going to get B tier just because you can do a kinetic build on it, but it's not like a good kinetic ship. It's like a bottom barrel kinetic ship, and that's my rating. So, and if you're looking to get a Lobi ship and you want to start with S tier, you want to ask yourself, am I looking to do science stuff? If yes, look at the Maquis Raider because it has that plasma storm generator. Also, it's in a mud bundle, and it's also a pretty good ship on its own. And then also look at the Ikodomi so you can get improved photonic officer. If you're looking to do kinetics, definitely go for the Intel battle cruiser, the Sona one, so you can get some special warheads. If you're thinking about beam overload, then you're going to want to look at the Primate Dreadnought Cruiser so you can get super weapon ingenuity. If you decided that you have all those, or for whatever reason you don't want those, all of your ships in the A tier here are going to be very solid, either because they're really solid ships to fly, or especially in the case of the NX, which is also, you can get the accessories from the legendary version. I would recommend that first. Then you're going to get some good accessories out of that, but the other ships are all just solid ships. B tier, these are all decent ships, but they're not great ships, and so they're awkward. They're just awkward is the word I'm looking for. They're awkward. They're good ships, but they're awkward. C tier, these are not good ships. Of the C tier ships, maybe the Paradox deserves to be in B tier. But, you know what, let's go ahead and do that. You know what, forget it. It's my list. I'm going to move it up to B tier. But the C tier ships are just, like, they're not awful, but they're not good either. And then the D tier ships, you should avoid at all costs. Like, if they were given to you for free, I probably wouldn't even open the box. Okay, so that's my review, my tier list of all the Lobi ships, and there's going to be more coming. There's going to be a tier list of all the event ships. There's going to be a tier list of all the lockbox ships. There's going to be a tier list of all the promo ships. And if you want to see those, as well as some other videos in this Advent event that I have going on right now, or any of my other videos, past, future, and present, then please like and subscribe so you can get notified and check those out. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.